Welcome to the Autistic Pride Day Symposium in Sydney. I'm Kyriakos Gold. This day is made possible by the generous support of the City of Sydney, so thank you, City. We're glad to be here and maybe for many years to come. The next panel is focusing on autistic-led programs for autistic people, and it's a very exciting one, so join me.
Kyriakos.
What do we mean when we say autistic-led solutions for autistic people?
Yeah, so what that actually means is that programs, be it social, life skills teaching, that they are either led or advised by autistic people for those people who are doing the program or social activity. And that is important because what we don't want to do is force conformity. We want to make sure that the autistic person retains their authenticity, and by doing that we can reduce masking, and by doing that we can enhance and help and improve mental well-being.
Tammie, you're one of 3 councillors in the nation that is publicly autistic. Are you seeing a change in the design of programs? Do you see more autistic-led co-design solutions?
So having autistic representation in council and in those political spaces enables us to bring motions to the chamber that get voted through and then implemented throughout the community. So it's really important to have representation in those higher level political positions so that we can bring these ideas to life.
Rebecca, what is it like for you? You're openly autistic, you've got a social enterprise. What are the barriers for autistic-led programs?
I think there are a few barriers. I think for myself at Future Tech, I think one of the largest barriers has been around gaining things like funding, and grant applications has been really, really tricky. I definitely find that they are written in such a way that often doesn't ask the right questions, for example, and so that can be a bit of a barrier. I also think there's a large element of having to get out and about, meeting lots of people, socializing, networking, that comes alongside being an entrepreneur generally, that can be quite challenging for autistic entrepreneurs.
And tell me a little bit about Future Tech. What do you do at Future Tech?
So Future Tech is a social enterprise, and we offer STEAM-based social and learning programs for autistic young people. We really focus on well-being, as we think that well-being is really the core of any progress. You have to feel well and feel safe to be able to learn and engage. So we've designed an entire wellbeing framework that has been developed through our team and our lived and learned expertise, that's really focuses in on what does well-being look like for autistic people, because it does look quite different to what it might look like for a neurotypical person. We hire predominantly neurodivergent people to come in and lead our programs. These are people who are scientists and software engineers in their real lives, and they come and they get to share their special interests with our young people.
Tammie, talk to me about Sunny Spectrum. What do you do in your social enterprise?
Yeah, so we're a social enterprise offering therapeutic support to neurodivergent and mostly autistic and ADHD individuals. We have a program called NeuroMe. It's a therapeutic program which really focuses on the internal experiences that an autistic individual will likely face. It's all about understanding what happens inside your body and finding strategies to work with your brain rather than against it, and identifying some really clear goals for future therapeutic services. We see a lot of people, particularly children, cycling through different therapies such as OT, speech, year after year, not really knowing why they are there. So we unpack some of the common concepts that we experience, such as burnout, overwhelm, nervous system responses, all of that. So they can really understand what's happening inside their body. And it's typically a 10-week program. And then they can leave that program with a clear vision of what they actually want to achieve from therapy.
So, Anita, tell me about Living on the Spectrum. You kind of connect a lot of programs together?
We do. So Living on the Spectrum is Australia's very first national autism directory. We launched about 5.5 years ago. And the idea was to ensure that all the supports and services were in one place, in one platform, to make ease of accessibility. A lot of what we found was a lot of parents and carers did not know what services and supports were out there. So we wanted to make that navigating that process easier, but also we're actually a media hub and news site. So we want to ensure that the right information, the neuro-affirming information that really embraces autistic culture and authenticity, we want to make sure that that information gets out to everybody.
So what are the key components of a successful autistic-led program? What are those things that you're looking for when you're selecting programs for your website?
Sure. I want to ensure that they are autistic-led or they have autistic people on their advisory board. I want to make sure that they are neuro-affirming. So if they follow that culture of autism and that identifying, not trying to cure, change or conform, that is a big no-no for us. So we want to make sure that autism is embraced, the autistic identity is embraced, and that fosters mental well-being, and that's what we're all about.
Tammie, what are the key components of a successful autistic-led program for you?
For us, I'd say it's listening to the input and the advice and the lived experience of our whole team in our business, especially. We're all neurodivergent, mostly all autistic. So everybody is welcome to share their experiences and everybody has an input into all of our programs. There's a lot of intersectionality and it's important to get representation from as many angles as possible.
I know for us, for Autistic Pride Day, we are autistic-led at almost 95%, but we constantly change for the feedback. Like the signs that you see on today is due to feedback from yesterday's event. So can you share some examples at Sunny Spectrum? So how things have changed, not because of the ideas of the original team, but because of things you've heard? Or maybe one of your latest additions to your program that you've heard from feedback?
Okay, so yeah, one of the latest things that we've developed is on the back of the NeuroMe program, we heard a lot of families who were wanting to have that same sort of service, but younger children maybe aren't ready to unpack the identity side of things. So it's working with families to educate and upskill so that they know how to I've lost my words again, I'm so sorry. So that families who live in a household perhaps with multiple neurodivergent people and have conflicting demands, sensory experiences, etc., can figure out how to work together and make it work and avoid all those conflicts that happen when we are.
Rebecca, what do you think are the key components of a successful autistic-led program, and any changes you've implemented at Future Tech due to listening to feedback?
Yeah, so I think definitely listening is one of the key components. But to do that, I think you also have to consider the different mechanisms that you have in place for feedback. So not everyone is going to come to you and outwardly tell you a piece of feedback. You have to have other types of mechanisms in place. So we've built into our technology at the end of each session, all of our kids get a note to say, how was today's session for you? And it's just sort of a happy, medium, sad face. And so we get that feedback. We also measure according to our wellbeing framework twice a year, just to see how our kids are going, essentially, and also then gain feedback around what's working for you, what are you enjoying, what do you hate, all of these things. And we are constantly working as a team to brainstorm and develop and change things. And I think one of the things I've definitely noticed is the rapidness of change within our organization. We get a piece of feedback and we build that in straight away, and it's sort of a constantly evolving program, which it's not a set and forget, because every young person that we support is different, and all of the staff that we support are also so unique as well.
I suspect that running a program like this costs a bit more money than not running the program, right? Like consultation costs. So is there any support for autistic-led programs?
It's I'd say it's limited. I haven't been able to come across any sort of monetary support. However, I definitely think that the community, the autistic community, is so generous in terms of, you know, in-kind supports and advice and guidance, and that is, you know, incredible. But yes, in terms of monetary, it is quite limited.
I mean, I want to use this platform to say how important it is to pay autistic people, and we've been able to put this event together with some of the funding that's come out of the City of Sydney, but ideally would be paying people a lot more. It's just almost embarrassing to ask for people to volunteer, and it feels like the structures in Australia are forcing us to do so, and I really feel uncomfortable about that. I wanted to hear your views, Tammie, because you are almost with one foot in politics, if you could call local government politics.
So from the Sunny Spectrum perspective, we started as a business, but very quickly realised that we had a bigger mission that we were on. We wanted to change the system, and in order to do that, we really had to start donating our time, advocating, meeting with various stakeholders to try and get them to hear what we have to say. But the nature of business is we're chasing billables all the time. Yeah. But as a social enterprise, we really need some funding. However, the funding usually goes to larger organisations that are more well established. Despite the track record we have, we've partnered with the Autism CRC as an affiliate partner, so we've been recognised as, you know. And
let's say that the businesses and the organisations that have been around for a long time traditionally are not autistic-led, because that was the system 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years ago.
Exactly. They're using rather outdated practices, in my opinion. And another challenge is they're not openly willing to learn from us. So we've developed workshops, for example, and we're lucky that a number of large organisations have engaged with that. But there's so many more that could learn from us if they wanted to.
I think just off the back of that as well, I think that one of the challenges is around that educating everyone else piece. So, you know, while what we do at Future Tech is working really well for our young people and our families, other outside organizations or schools or other types of communities don't get it. They don't understand what we do. They look at it and they think, oh, well, they're not, you know, talking to one another, so they can't be possibly socializing. And so there's a lot of education around, well, actually socializing looks different for autistic people, and that's okay. And so I think there's a lot of extra hours and time and volunteering that sort of goes into that piece as well.
We should accept and, you know, make sure that we don't push the wrong narrative that a lot of great work is happening by some big organizations. It's just that we're all competing for the same amount of funding, and sometimes we're just positioned into two different camps, which is not ideal. Anita, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, look, I agree with Rebecca. What's happening is there's a lot of grants and money going to large organisations who are appointing autistic voices just as a token gesture to get the funding. I've seen it. I'm so frustrated at it. And exactly what Rebecca said, what's happening is when I say they, I'm talking about the funding groups, have their own perceived idea of what autistic programs should be, and they have their own ideas of the outcomes. And the outcomes are trying to make the autistic person more like a neurotypical person. That is their outcome. And when we say, as autistic people, that is not the way we want to do the funding, they just do not understand it, and they think that they are throwing money to waste if they are going to fund those particular programs. So I think the education needs to start higher in government, and I know we have had the autism strategy. I still do not.
We're just talking about it.
Well, the draft is in. The draft is in. I still don't think the higher
Powers to be.
Get it. Yeah. And I think we need to invite them to forums like this, so we need to share these videos and these discussions so that they understand that tokenism is not going to change.
I think Sharon's going to love the next two comments, because as she told us yesterday that South Australia's Office for Autism advertised positions and said the director has to be autistic, the leadership has to be autistic. Is that right? Yeah. So that's an amazing first step, at least in Adelaide, right? So another issue that came up in yesterday's discussion was stereotyping autistic people. There's this misconception that we're all good at computers and that we all want to do maths, and it's just like, no, I just want to paint. So autistic-led programs cater for that, don't they, Rebecca?
Yeah, so I guess at Future Tech, our initial focus was very much on science and technology, mostly because when I first established Future Tech, I hadn't been diagnosed myself. And so it was very much designed around what my younger brother Sam, was interested in and good at. And that was very much the science and tech. And when I got my diagnosis was really when we started to bring the A in the STEAM, because I love politics and I love arts and I love, all of these other things. And I realized that actually, I wasn't seeing myself represented within the programs that we were delivering. So we really shifted that. And yeah, I think it is really important not to pigeonhole people into certain areas. I think also things like leadership is really overlooked. People don't necessarily think that autistic people can be good leaders for some reason, which I just think is unbelievably incorrect. The way we problem solve and see things can often be an incredible asset to leadership.
I'm going to put you on the spot, Jacob, because you work at AV on the employment program side. So I wanted to hear your insights in terms of the diversity of autistic people that come through your program.
Yeah, well, that's actually something I was just thinking about then is recently, right now I'm working on a pilot program for young adults, but predominantly I've been working with the youth and teenagers at the moment. So what I'm finding there is I get to see quite a diverse range of interests before they've hit the career terrain and their goals and dreams have been smashed. There's kids who come into our workshops, you ask them what their sort of ideal is. One said like a space, explore, like when we're talking about the stereotypes, there were some who were stereotyped. There was the more analytical. Pardon? No, don't. No, but trains though, few train enthusiasts. But no, so, there were the stereotypes of those who are more creative, and then, those who prefer more analytical based stuff. But then there were those who, the abstract ones, like I want to be a like space mathematician or quantum physicist, like just some of the really quirky stuff. And I think the important thing about an autistic-led program, and say having me behind that versus neurotypical, is I'm not going to shut that down, because I'm understanding that, their interest and that passion and all those things, I can see it in this room. It leads us to, great positions. So, I think that there is quite a diverse range of our skills and of our interests, and they need to be harnessed and supported by us.
I just wanted to come off the back of that as well, actually. So one of the things that I think I've noticed with our young people is that they have incredible interests, incredible talents, but not necessarily, and I think this is a result of the school system boxing things in. They don't necessarily know how to take their special interest and apply it in other areas to really create almost like a job or a career out of that. And so a lot of what we are doing is trying to show our young people that, science isn't just sitting in a lab, or tech isn't just on a computer, or art's not just, painting. It could be digital art as well. So like showing them kind of how their skills and their interests can be applied in other areas to sort of support that career development.
I think programs are driven very much from diagnosis and the language that's used in diagnosis. I was talking to some Greek people over the weekend about autism, and I don't know if this language is used in Australian diagnostic tools, but they called special interests obsessive behavior. Yeah. And I had this mother that came to me and was asking for advice on my TikTok, because I do autistic content, and she goes, what do I do? They are telling me to stop his obsessive behavior, and my words were, just stop calling it obsessive behavior, because that could be a great scientist, you know, in that special interest. So do we see any movement in that connection between diagnostic tools and language and programs?
Oh, I'm seeing it through the platform that people are, the programs that are being put forward through our platform. I am seeing more people leaning into the special interests, where before special interests was a bit of a ick word. I don't know if you agree. A lot of people, especially parents and carers, we have a lot of parents and carers who use our platform, and they sort of thought that was a bit of an ick term, like, oh, I can't really, like the whole train stereotype and dinosaur stereotypes, and they were trying to sort of make sure so their child appeared not as autistic. So they tried to steer them away. But I think what's happening now is there's some great programs that we've got that are leaning into autistic people's special interest, and it's fostering a really great diverse employment opportunities. You know, people have written books about their special interest, and they're doing TikToks. People are making money from TikTok. You know what I mean? Well, not in Australia, in America maybe. But, I was just joking. But there are opportunities now, and I'm actually seeing more programs coming in that really lean on the special interest, and I think that's awesome.
I think this comes back to the idea of why it's so important to have autistic people driving these programs. So I think that my special interests have been a protective factor for my mental well-being my entire life. And so many young people are being discouraged from their special interests because they're being classified as, you know, obsessive, repetitive interests or behaviors. And I think that because I'm autistic and I know how important it is to have special interests and to be able to engage in those, we're encouraging this and trying to help our young people find their special interests again, because so many of them have been, you know, ripped away or lost because of, the systems that they're in.
Tammie?
I think that the special interests are an interesting topic for in regards to employment. Absolutely, we should pull on special interests and productive strengths and things like that in employment. But I think we need to be mindful to protect our interests as well. If we go gung-ho with them in our employment, we may lose that interest. And then we don't have that to fall back on for our replenishing our energy and protecting our well-being. So I think it needs to be a balance.
I'm curious to hear what you think are the red flags or things that are being done wrong, maybe when non-autistic people are doing it, or like, what not to do, essentially.
One of the key things I see as a red flag is when we're talking about autistic-led programs, what I've noticed, you know, because I sort of speak to and advise a few different programs, quite often they're autistic co-designed, but they're not autistic-led. And one of the red flags is how much poor return on investment that's going to give people. So when we're saying these big people are getting all the funding, they are doing this, they're not getting the most return out of the investment. So even those who are giving them the money, I think that's a red flag for me. When you don't have an autistic leader, that would be the first thing, because I'd know that the whole thing's not going to be as proactive, productive, and the data and the experience isn't going to be a big...
I think in regards to red flags and autistic programs, again, with balance, there needs to be a balance of research and an evidence base as well, as long as the evidence has been conducted on autistic people, which usually it hasn't. But I think a red flag for me is when a program has a lot of opinion around it rather than some evidence and research as well. It needs to be a mix of both, in my opinion.
So we hear of a lot of support and programs for autistic kids or children, but what kind of support or programs are available for late diagnosed autistics?
Well, we have a late diagnosed program for individuals. It's an online program facilitated by a counsellor, and it unpacks all the things associated with the feelings you might have after a diagnosis, and because there is an element of grief of what you expected your life would be and what it is now. So it's a little bit of a process that is often quite isolating. People don't always talk about it. So I think getting together with a group of people who have been on that similar path is really good. There's not enough of it, is the short answer though. And I think there's a lot of focus on children's programs and social skills, blah, blah, blah. But there needs to be more about the adult experience, those who've been masking for a period of time, a long time. And how do they reconcile this now?
We don't necessarily have any programs at Future Tech for late diagnosed or for adults. However, I think the impact of having autistic people leading programs for young people can't really be ignored, and I think it often is. So for us, our team, most of them have been diagnosed since they started working with us. So we have kind of held their hand throughout that whole journey. And one of the most beautiful things that I have heard, I think, ever, was one of our mentors saying that she felt like she was healing her inner child through being able to support young people. And I definitely think it's sort of a reciprocal relationship where young people are teaching us things, we're teaching them things, and it's
I mean, with all the I've been reflecting on late diagnosis for so long because I was only diagnosed 5 years ago, and with all the issues that come in a world that we didn't know who we are, we actually have a perspective of late diagnosis now that gives us the language to address issues. So there is a silver lining, I guess, in having a late diagnosis and being with one foot in each world, especially depending on what part of the spectrum you're on. Could I pass the mic on to...
Thank you. I just want to ask, is there any program or workshop for parents of autistic people? How can we help?
Like adults? For adults?
Yeah, to adults. I'm not talking about children, mostly about adults with autism, and how can I help as a parent?
There's many programs that you can do for parents, but they are not all created equal. So yes, there are programs available, and they vary from, short 1-hour webinars to long 12-month programs. And we have a lot of them in the directory. The thing is, it's important, I think, from our perspective as autistic individuals, is that any program that you do engage in is neuro-affirming. And what we mean by that is that it's not talking about... I have this big thing about conformity. I see a lot of it in the platform where lots of programs are trying to make autistic young people and kids more neurotypical, and I think that is really harmful. And you shouldn't be in a program or therapy just because you're autistic. It just shouldn't happen. You should have a goal, or you should want you should have, teach life skills. It shouldn't just be for the sake of it. So I think any program that can teach you that as a parent, to understand, what autistic authenticity is and culture, and to understand your child. So the short answer is yes, there is a few, and I think, Tammie, you've got that program. Don't you?
We have some things underway, and we will shortly. In terms of all the programs that are out there for parents, I would avoid anything that is looking at it from a parent's lens, or the parent's needs. So it should focus on the child's experience and what supports they need to be themselves and to thrive, not how to make a parent's life less stressful, for example. So looking at what autism is from a strengths perspective rather than a behavioural perspective. So I'd suggest things like reframing autism, yellow ladybugs, those not-for-profits that are run by autistic people who are doing some really great things.
We're talking about non-for-profits that help autistic people. That's what AV is. Although I'm here talking about employment predominantly, we do have a lot of, we're probably more known for our peer support groups. And I think if you're talking about just wanting some guidance and some help along the way, that would probably be the place I'd suggest that you go. Because then again, you're going to meet some family like some other parents and carers who have probably done some of the programs you're looking at doing. They can give you that advice. And I think, but that community that you'll get from a peer group might be what you're looking for more so than a program. Yeah, but potentially. And then you can look at the program a little bit differently and approach the program aspect from the problem that you may be experiencing. If we're talking about yourself, do the program based on the skill that you're trying to develop, not looking at the autism as a how to help the autism, but just join a community. If you come to AV, and the benefit of that and joining a community of a non-for-profit is, you may get the experience to hear sort of special interest stuff. So, for example, I spoke at our parents and carers group. We're a volunteer-led group, so we're all pretty close-knit. Like on my career network, for example, which is a special interest peer group, I've had some of the people in this room.
Maybe also say AV is Asperger's.
Oh, yeah, sorry. AV is Asperger's Victoria. We are moving away from that name into AV. That's why I've just got that into my mind. So, yes, it's Asperger's Victoria. You can get my contact later. But I'd suggest starting with community first. I made the same comment yesterday about trying to access a diagnosis. But I'd recommend you join there, and I'll help you get into that smoothly.
I think the first thing we need to do is ask autistic people what they need. And when we're thinking about what they need, to just ask ourselves the question. I had a mother the other day that was telling me, I'm really worried about my son's school and I don't know what to do. And I said to her, is he having a good time at school? And she actually never thought of that. It was her feeling that their son was going to be teased or bullied, but never stopped to ask the child, are you being bullied? It was that, oh, I've got the stigma of autism. I've got the stigma of a mother that's given birth to an autistic child. I've got shame. I think my child's going to have shame. Most of the times, we don't feel that.
I can speak to that if you like. So it's quite common, very common, that we'll see children with social skills goals. And those social skills programs promote that neurotypical way of playing, for example, whereas if you ask the autistic child, they might be quite happy playing alongside other children. And if we take away their right to do that and force them to do the neurotypical play, it's not play anymore. Because if the fun is gone, which likely it is, it's not play anymore.
I want to share something very personal. I remember being about 9 years old, and an aunt of mine gave me a game called Solo because she had noticed that I enjoyed playing alone. And my mum was so cut about it and kept on talking how her sister-in-law was a real and made fun of me and jabbed at her when she was just trying to help, really. And I loved that game. So it's that reframing of the parental role and who are we supporting, and it's the societal shame as well. Like, let's face it, parents just live in society like we do.
I think as well, just placing our expectations onto others, like what we expect a good life or a good social life or having enough friendships looks like. I have 2 very good friends and I do not want any more. I am very, very happy. Exactly. Why do we expect children, young people, to have all of these friends and want to be around people all of the time? It's crazy.
I was wondering, with people having higher support needs, but then a lot of organizations have a limited amount of resource, but kind of live in a world that if people have high support needs, then it's more expensive and need more resources to help them. What are your thoughts on that? Like, how do you help people if you want to hire people that have high support needs?
If we want to hire people with higher support needs, which we absolutely do because everybody has something to contribute, then we need to be providing accommodations for that. So if we're talking about employment, for example, we need to be pulling on the government systems that are available. They are not always easy to find. So that's something we like to highlight in one of our workshops that we've done today about knowing our rights. There is a scheme, the Job Access Scheme and the Employee Assistance Fund. There is absolutely no reason an employer, if the individual has disclosed their disability, can access some funding to provide those accommodations, and it's discriminatory if they don't.
You were just mentioning then, is that for people who only have the official diagnosis, or is that also for people who are self-identified or diagnosed?
There's no requirement to disclose a disability in the workplace. There's no requirement to demonstrate proof of disability in the workplace. The focus should always be on what support does that person need. If that person says they have a disability, depending on the cost of the item that is required or the adjustments that need to be made, then there may need to be a workplace assessment provided. But more often than not, if it's a low-cost item such as headphones or dimmer switches, for example, that is something that should absolutely be provided via the Job Access Scheme.
And, what employer would say no to dim switches? That's like, why? Well, they would, but it's like, how can you be blamed for asking? It's not an unreasonable request.
Well, it's not, and that's the thing. And there is the Disability Discrimination Act, but there's a lot of ways that employers get around that.
And Tammie will run a workshop on rights today in what we call the UN room, the one in the corner. So feel free to come to it.
I do think that beyond the accessing the supports and stuff, I think for businesses, those changes and those supports need to be actually implemented and thought about in the actual business model from the roots, from the ground. Our problem is we're trying to change existing businesses and we're trying to change the way that they're already doing things, and that's where we're having a lot of the troubles.
And what a great point to close today's topic with. Thank you so much for being with us today. We have a lot more panels, a lot more sessions and workshops. Stay with us. I'm Kyriakos Gold and this is Autistic Pride Day Symposium in Sydney.